about. As I opened my eyes, I could see where the candle, like the wax had just come over the candle and it was about to start on fire.
But it's nice to see people like you that have embraced it fully and have started to give back yourself and have amplified that impact. And so it's a beautiful thing to see. My life at the time, fresh out of a relationship, struggling with real estate, got my license right before the market crashed, just broke, just frustrated and lost. So beautifully expressed. And like I've had so many ceremonies where you almost don't want to talk about it because you won't do it justice. Like I cannot put into words the experience I've had.
All right. So I think we can get this party started.
Brother Lane, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Brother Stefan, good to have you here, brother.
Thanks. Good to be here. I gotta say it's interesting because to kind of see the full circle moment of this, because I remember when you pitched it as an idea years ago after your trip to Bali, I just always loved the question and just like the marketability of it. And it's gone through different iterations from, the doc and the little docu-series and now this. So it's very, very cool. So
yeah, you got to see it full circle from, God, when were we in? I did the Bali, but then we were actually in Thailand.
For my 40th.
Shot a little bit over there. That was pretty cool.
So then the Bali was before that because you had that idea then. So that was, so my 40th, that was 2018. So you were in Bali, 17?
Yeah.
So almost 10 years.
Jeez, here we go. Full circle. Go from pitching it to, not working out anywhere. I think I was pitching Netflix, Gaia TV. Actually, they aired some of it.
They used it, by the way. I was watching, actually, what's his name? Ben Stewart, which is one of the early guys that kind of got me into some of this, the space of these different mindsets and opening my eyes to, a new way of thinking early on with something he did called not Zeitgeist. It was Kamatika and what was the other one? Anyway, but so he had a new thing on Gaia and you're featured in that. I'm like, holy shit, that's What's Your Medicine footage.
Yeah.
So
I
shot
shot this episode. It was called The Healing Matrix. And we were talking all things medicine. I brought this guy named Daniel Carlson on the show. He was a hockey player. And then they're like, we love what you're doing. I was like, great. You guys want to fund it?
Yeah.
And they're like,
no, but we'll just take your footage.
We'll take your footage. I think they paid me $1,000 for a bunch of footage that they ended up, then using for, some different series.
Yeah. I was wondering if you got compensated with that. Cause I remember the story that you were saying, like, they didn't necessarily jump on the idea of full swing, but they wanted some footage. And so when I saw it popped up, I'm like, I hope you know about this, and I hope you got paid for it. So good to know.
Yeah, a little bit. It's fine.
But it's just still cool to be part of that. Like for me to kind of see, someone that, like I said, was a kind of a catalyst to me jumping into some of these things, and then to see you being part of his new content. It was kind of cool. It was
That's a fun little circle moment.
Yeah.
But I think we should first tell people how we met, because it's pretty interesting. Coming back in. Actually, I'd moved from New York. We kind of have similar stories of how we, coming to this party. But we were both going to this party in Venice for these girls. It was their twin girls' birthday party.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because at that time I had been researching ayahuasca, wanting to learn more about it, thinking about diving into an experience. And then all of a sudden I see, start playing volleyball with you, on the beach in Venice, and some guy's like, well, that guy leads ayahuasca ceremonies.
Yeah, because I think you were asking him about it, and playing volleyball, we're probably trash talking, peacocking, you're like, this guy.
Yeah, that was exactly it.
Like, yeah, of course, and I get it because I obviously have similar judgments or first impressions when I see people that are doing some of the work. It's different than having somebody comes and meets me in the space. They don't see me in other versions of myself other than that space, but to see the the parallel universes colliding. So I totally get it. But yeah, so I'm glad that, you trusted, and there was that that coincident moment or whatever.
Full circle moment. So we'll tell the audience, but I met you. I was like, okay, super cool guy, playing volleyball with him, but he leads ayahuasca ceremonies. I'm like, he's too good looking. He should be, my idea of a shaman or facilitator that's doing these ceremonies is completely different from what I experienced. Yeah. And then, actually then I was like, all right, well, that's cool. You're doing a ceremony in about a month. Do you have any references? And so I've got this, the long list, and there was one girl that I ended up picking,
Yeah, which was like, that in itself was a weird, like, what made you pick her kind of thing. Yeah.
It's like number 7 down the list. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. I'll take her. And then randomly calling her, the following week, I had my dad in town. I was down in Venice, and I was like, oh, Dad, I forgot I got to call this girl. It's about this ayahuasca ceremony I want to do. And he's like, yeah, cool. No problem. So I call her up, and it just randomly, I was like super windy. I was like, sorry, I can't really hear you. I'm down in Venice. It's super windy. And she's like, oh yeah, me too. I'm like, oh really? She gives me her coordinates. Where are you? And it turns out, I remember raising my hand. I'm like, is that you? And wow. She's like block and a half down the beach. And I was like, wow, if that wasn't a sign from Mother Ayahuasca.
But it's amazing how, and for you to, again, like what made you pick that name and to kind of follow the guidance or follow the synchronicity of that sign or whatever. Yeah. So I'm glad it did, because not only, did we have some great times in sacred space, but an amazing friendship developed from that. So
it's amazing. Yeah. And I mean, I'll just also say too, is you basically impacted what I'm doing as a career now. I mean, a lot of, What's Your Medicine, a lot of obviously the ceremony work I'm doing, it all you really spawned from us meeting and hanging out with you. And I'm like, I thought you were a really cool guy back then. I don't know about now.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. You're freaking awesome.
My fall from grace.
Yeah, no, it's, so I just remember early on and then assisting you in these ceremonies. 5 years.
And a lot of people have over the years. Matt was one of the original, Wes, those guys, and their paths have changed a little bit over the years, just, proximity, geography. But with you, there was that noticeable difference. I mean, they were great as well, obviously. But of other people that sometimes will just do like a, quick jump in to help with this ceremony for whatever reason, to see the consistency in your not only passion around it and your drive to dive in deeper and to search, further, and just the way you show up in space, it was very obvious for me. Like, that's why I remember saying, like, dude, this is something that, you should potentially, if you're passionate about it, consider doing. And you were hesitant about it, which I think is always a good sign versus, some of those people who do one ceremony or two ceremonies. And of course, you kiss the face of God and, you think you're enlightened and you want to go and lead ceremonies the next day. To kind of be a little bit reluctant around that, which I think is a good, testament to your humility and your desire to have a strong foundation. But I remember at some point, and then you would, sometimes I remember sometimes letting you like jump into the pilot seat, right? Do this, and then you never fucked up that song, and so you touched it. Like that's why every time you just be gracious or whatever, it's like oh shit. But then eventually, I remember just giving you, I think it was for your birthday or something, just giving you like a little vial of ayahuasca and like, here, this is your first solo mission. Here's the music. Here's the setup, which you knew quite well. And I think you said that one you actually ended up doing like 2 back to back. Like you finished it and you just kind of just drank the rest and jumped in again.
And that was by the way, big test, because I did that ceremony for myself, waiting for the right time. And I finally found this time and space. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it tonight. I ended up telling my neighbor, hey, by the way, I'm going to be doing an ayahuasca ceremony in case anything goes off the rails. She's a good friend of mine, Kylie Edwards. Yeah. And then I remember in that ceremony though, I'm deep in and, Mother Ayahuasca was like, your candle's burning. And I'm like, what are you talking about? As I opened my eyes, I could see where the candle, like the wax had just come over the candle and it was about to start on fire. And I was like, oh, deep in space, grab the candle, bring it over to the kitchen and just put it out. But then from that point forward, I was like, all right, she's got my back.
Yeah. It confirms for me, the narrative of like, if the intention is pure, you'll be protected kind of thing. And, similar things have happened. I remember Josie actually leaning over and her thing got caught on fire with, over the altar and like, swat that down. And so it's always worked out well. It's always somehow been saved or controlled or whatever by intuition or mother herself or whatnot. So to have that on your first thing to kind of really reiterate that you're protected and she'll help you and I guess instills that trust in the medicine, I guess.
Yeah. And ever since I've known you, you've been the pioneer. You've been the tip of the spear. You're the one always going to explore, try something new. Has it been that way ever since you were a little kid?
Yeah, I think so. Growing up with 2 brothers older than me, both hearing impaired, and now, have retinal problems. They have a very rare condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So it's a degenerative disease. So they started losing their sight in their teen years. And I'm 4 years behind the oldest and 2 years behind Yuri. Sasha and Yuri. So at a very young age, I was always the one that kind of had to step up and, navigate the social realms, first one to get a job, first one to buy my place, anything that wasn't age related. Sasha obviously got his license first because he's 4 years ahead. But what was cool about that is that it kind of really kept us together. And let's say, 14 years old, Yuri's 16, even at 12, 13 years old, they were hanging out with kind of people my age, my group. So I'd have like a brother with a license that's driving us around, right? Most times the older brother's off with his friends doing his own thing. So, but throughout that process, there's always been, perhaps this unconscious or maybe conscious need to kind of step up and be the one kind of like figuring out, I didn't have that younger brother relationship where you learn from your older brother, from some of the things he experiences in life and then passes down. It was, because of their impairment, obviously, especially in the older days before hearing aids got better. It's still so they didn't retain as much information. There was not as much information coming in. So obviously, they socially weren't as, dialed in or whatnot. So I think that had an impact with me being kind of like more driven or more active in pursuing, exploring, discovering. And into the later years, I was the first one to drink, the first one to do any of these things. And I've always been I left Canada, traveled around and discovered all these things out in the world and brought it back. So there was, which one is it? Nurture versus nature. Was that in me before, or was that, born through the circumstance? I'm not quite sure. I think a bit of both, to be honest, because I remember at a very young age, I was like mad at my parents. I'm moving out. I packed a bag, suitcase, literally have a suitcase. I was in like my underwear with my baby blanket and a suitcase.
I'm out.
And I'm like, gone. They're like, okay, bye. Of course they're watching me. They see me leave the house. And there's actually a really cool picture of me like passed out on the front step, like just like in my little boxers, half naked with my suitcase right outside the front door. I probably walked out and like, where do I go from here? And let me just rest and think about it. And I just passed out and they took a picture. So there was like, that drive or that adventurous spirit, I guess, within me, amplified by circumstance, I would think. So I think there's a bit of that, and, there's something I like the adventure. I like discovering, I like exploring, and B, I like sharing, and I think that my desire to push the boundaries and to go beyond, knowing that I may have a nugget to bring back to the tribe, is what maybe fuels my passion or the level of which I do it.
Yeah, because you had to do it at such a young age. You're like, hey, guess what? Because I always thought
now
that.
What?
Yeah, my older brother, older sister were introducing me to new things. It's just the nature of how we grow
family
up.
Normally,
And you just became that at a young age, and so those qualities were instilled at such a young age, and then I feel like it's a natural progression. You've already taken that, automatically, especially within the groups that we all hang out with. They're like, have you guys tried this?
So what about that? Hey, have you heard about this?
Yeah.
And it feels like, my relationship with Aya, which we can maybe dive into a bit further down the road, has been now where I feel like in passing some of the, message or wisdom or however you want to label it back to the tribe and being, like leading ceremonies and guiding some people into these things, there's a level of my growth that's been stunted in the sense that all the time that I spend kind of giving back or passing around, I haven't really had a chance to explore. So which is why lately I feel like I've kind of pulled back from that. And I feel like now there's that drive to kind of go out and find the next thing and explore the next realms or dive in deeper in different areas. So I'm kind of in that pivotal moment. I guess I have been for the last few years, but I think this year will be now a bit more committed to jumping back out into the world, to kind of
nice.
That next thing,
to go explore the alternative medicines or whatever that may be. Yeah, I guess that was part of my question is I know that I was. I heard about ayahuasca through this doctor in Czech Republic of all places. And then I'd started researching it, seeing all the YouTube clips and, all the success stories and all the horrible stories. You see all that, the fear tactics. Didn't work for me. So I actually stepped in. But that, how did you get introduced to ayahuasca? What was it that, planted that seed of, I'm going to Peru?
Yeah, it was a bit of a longer process. This was back probably 2007 or 8, It was known, but definitely not to the level that it is today. And I'd heard about it, and this is before I had done anything. Like, alcohol and cigarettes, I guess, was the only drug I'd ever, partook in. And I heard about it. It seemed intriguing, but my judgmental, like, I don't do drugs, I'm high on life, and that judgmental mindset I had at the time, I was thinking like, oh, this is just an excuse for a bunch of backpackers to get high in the jungle. Like, what is this, And then, but I'd known about it. It had been on my radar. And then watching things like Ben Stewart and Graham Hancock and Greg Braden and all these guys that were quantum physics and the ethereal worlds and all that stuff, it kept coming up as a modality of kind of diving into these realms, these hypothetical. I mean, quantum physics is obviously more scientific, but the in between science, parallel universes, string theory, and all that stuff, and this kind of kept coming up as a kind of a tool or a method of diving into that. And so I'm like, all right, if all these guys that I respect are, referring to this or have done it or are, condoning it or at least giving some data around it. So I kind of approached it from more the scientific mindset, starting from there and then moving in more to the spiritual realm. And so then I'm like, all right, well, maybe there's something here, something there. And then, my life at the time, fresh out of a relationship, struggling with real estate, got my license right before the market crashed, just broke, just frustrated and lost. And so, I was thinking, well, if my way is the right way, if I'm against all this stuff and no, you should be, if that's the right way, how am I so miserable and how's it not working? Maybe there's something I'm doing wrong. So I suspended my belief system enough to be like, okay, well, maybe there's something here. So I was open to it, and then did a little research, watched some videos, not too much and there wasn't that much out there at the time,
right?
Like all the docs and things we have nowadays, but enough to there's videos of the shamans, the people singing the Icaros, and so I was at a party at the Standard Hotel, of all places, typical Hollywood party, and this woman I was chatting with, and subject somehow came up, ayahuasca or whatever, and she was like, oh yeah, there's this great center, Temple of the Way of Light.
Oh, yeah.
You should check it out, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got home and I looked up the website, and it was the same shamans. The videos on their website was of some of the things I'd seen, kind of like your sign with Casey,
right?
The girl who you had called in Venice. That was my sign of like, all right, well, this is kind of a sign to, this is the right place, and finally just time to do it. So I sent a little group chat or email to a few friends that, we had talked about it. Some that, would have been nice to have there, but I was inviting them more out of like, if I don't invite them, it's awkward, whatever. So luckily the ones, the two that I was really hoping would come, Rory Friedman and well, maybe I shouldn't say names, but Rory and my friend Scott Davies, I can say his name because I'm sure he wouldn't mind. They're like, yeah, we're in. I'm like, great. So we all went down there together as like a fun little adventure. And just had an amazing experience. My first few, I wasn't really connecting, which was frustrating because I was drinking more than most, and everyone else was popping off, having these amazing experiences. And I'm like, I spent literally when I went to the airport, the house I was renting had been sold, and I had a crazy situation. I had a 4-bedroom house, $1 million house, that I was renting for like $900 a month. Luckily, because I was broke and couldn't afford much else, so they sold it. And I had to be out, like they were closing while I was in Peru. And I'm like, well, I'll just move out when I get back. They're like, well, no, you can't. Like, cause I'm in real estate. Obviously I wouldn't advise a client to close with a tenant in there cause they can squat or whatnot. So they're like, well, we'll give you $5,000 or $6,000 if you move out, which was the day after. My flight was at 6 p.m. the next day. And this was like, noon the day before. So I'm like, shit, but I needed that money because I had no money. So my neighbor, Lupercio, he had a little garage. I'm like, can I just stick all my shit in there and I'll just deal it when I get back? He's like, great. So did that, swept clean, had the guy inspect, gave me a check. I'm like, that's literally paying for my trip because everything was on credit.
Wow.
And so I go to the airport with my motorcycle, with my backpack, with nowhere to live when I come back, right? Like I'm just like, this is going to save my life. This is going to be the answer to all my problems. And I guess I was over leveraged on, this magical pill that we all think that it'll be. And so the first ceremony, nothing. Second ceremony, nothing. Third ceremony, nothing. I'm like, there's 7. We did 7 in 10 days. So I had like 4 left. I'm like, spend all the money I have. I have no, like, I'm desperate for answers or desperate for something to save me kind of thing. And so I'm like, at that point, I'm like, all right, this is whatever. Like, it's a crock of shit. It's not going to work for me, whatever, blah, blah. Because, they were like, you just got to let go. I'm like, I don't fucking know how to let go. That's why I'm here. And so I guess that was the letting go I needed. On the fourth one, I'm like, all right, this is not for me. I'll drink because I already paid for it. I'm here. So fuck it. And I drank, and that was the most powerful experience of my life. And what came from that is, later on, and when the calling came to serve the medicine was, it gave me perspective to some people don't quite connect on the first one or two or three or whatever. And to be able to understand that and how to like guide them through that and all that stuff. So everything kind of came together to have that, powerful experience, to put everything in context. But yeah, it was amazing. And so last year, or more recently, a few months ago, I went back 15 years later to the same place that I first did it. Didn't quite have the same experience. I didn't quite connect throughout, and it was a bit frustrating remembering the first time. I'm like, well, maybe it'll come through, and it didn't, but I'm trying to pull insight in different ways, which we can dive into a bit later. But so that's what kind of brought me, that's how I got to it. And then slowly but sure, then I got back, and there was like things started to fall in place. There was this condo I had seen. I knew the building. I didn't even see the condo, but it was for sale. I'm like, that's like half price because the market had crashed. I'm like, oh, maybe my uncle was looking to invest in property. Hey, if you front the money, I'll buy it under my name, because for tax purposes, I'll pay you the 5% direct, which was, I'll split the profits when we sell. I had this whole little thing. So I ended up buying that place, but I had a month during the escrow process. Where do I live? Scott, who had moved to Australia, had a place that he had rented. There was like a couple months left on the lease. He's like, dude, you can just stay at the beach house. I'm like, so I'm, living in the beach I paid him whatever I would normally be able to afford, $900 a month. So I paid him that. So I'm there for a month living on the beach. And then I got the condo, and like things started to fall in place. So like that, the answers, or the things that we expect, like it's going to be this, light bulb and everything changes. You might be inspired to kind of, take that road, but like the subtle changes happen kind of over time. So that's kind of what started the path to, building the life that I'm leaving now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important message. Is it's not going to be like these are your lottery ticket numbers. Yeah. This is what you need to do, but it does open you up to some new possibilities. Yeah.
Ways of thinking, or weight that you're shedding that doesn't look like a result until months later, where you realize that, you're not sludging 10 pounds of, baggage, even if you lose 3 pounds of baggage, climbing a mountain, like it doesn't feel like much change, but that might be the difference between summiting and not summiting, right?
Yeah.
3 pounds compound over, 10,000 feet. So yeah, I think it's, a message to pass along is sometimes the changes are not obvious at first, but trusting the process and taking it day by day eventually breeds change if you're committed to the path.
Yeah, like staying and doing the proper things like intakes, proper eat well, drink well, get exercise, talk to yourself nicely.
Yeah.
Be open to the miracles. Be open to the the new places that are popping up.
Yeah.
Be open to have a good community, like your friend who had the place and the beach. You're like, oh, great.
Yeah.
A free place to stay for a month.
And also to be okay with some of the darkness that still lingers, and to be patient with how that dissipates over time.
Yeah. That was one of the funny things I remember, because I went to the jungle years. I mean, after I worked with you for many years, I ended up going to Peru. I remember you saying, well, you should go work with other people. It'd be great. Yeah. So I remember booking this trip to Peru to go work with this shaman named Diego in Puerto Montolando, middle of nowhere. And it was an amazing ceremony. And he's playing the guitar the whole time, singing Icaros. And so it was a very profound experience. And then afterwards, his phone starts blowing up. First of all, I'm like, why does this shaman have a phone?
Yeah.
Because it just blew my mind. And then it just kept ringing and ringing. He's like, oh, hang on. He picks up the phone, and I could hear this woman screaming at him. And he hangs up. He's like, oh, sorry, that was my ex-wife. I forgot something about the kids. And I'm like, my whole world just shattered. Yeah. And then I remember him looking at me. He's like, yeah. In the world of ayahuasca, I'm there as your guide, but we all deal with real world problems. We're still humans,
Everybody's still human. It's like, that's the old adage of sometimes it's not good to meet your heroes because you realize they're human, and it's true. I think I remember my mom. We were big into Tony Robbins, Augmendino, Brian Tracy, all that stuff at a young age. I read Unleash the Power Within at 12 years old, and so Augmendino was one of these other writers, probably not as known these days, and my mom was a big fan. She had 20 books or whatever, and she went to one of his talks, and she was gonna have him sign it for all her friends, giving out his book. And I'm sure like he's on this book tour and he's, talking all night and blah, blah. And you see a line of people, you're thinking, all right, one book each, I'm almost done. And my mom comes with like 20 books, and he made a comment of like, oh, like he was tired or something. And she was just like devastated, like how, which is a wrong move in the sense, like this is probably your biggest fan. It's the one person you should, spend a little extra time with or whatever. But I get it. He's tired. He's on, to him, it's just another day at the office. And I remember her being like super disappointed. Like, her whole view of him kind of changed. Like you said, like, what the fuck? But he's human, it's just picture you, any celebrity on their days off, they're getting, haggled by paparazzis, people, selfies. Like at some point you're going to be burnt out. You might be a dick to somebody, and then that's the story they tell. Oh, I met, whatever, Tom Cruise once and he was an asshole. Like, well, yeah, consider the source, consider the context. Maybe everybody, but Keanu Reeves, but yeah, we're all human, it's, and not to throw out the wisdom and the nuggets that you get from any given person because you found out something about them, like separate the man from the myth or the woman from the myth. Yeah. Because the nuggets are still valuable regardless of what source it came from in that context. So yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, we're real. It's just life. I guess it's how you treat the issue. Is the issue. So we're all going to have problems that come up. I remember early on, I'm like, oh yeah, I could get all the answers and ayahuasca, and I see other people, looking for that. This is going to be it. This is going to solve all my problems. But it's like the problems never go anywhere. Problems will always be in the world. It's just how we treat them,
or how do you upgrade? Like you're always going to have problems. So the goal is to upgrade your problems, right? Do you want the problem of like missing the bus or the problem of like repairing your car? If you have a car, you got to have to repair it. It might break down. It's a problem, but it's a better problem than maybe being, confined by public transport and missing the bus. Yeah. Then it's the jet, right? The jet's the pilot got sick or whatever. Like you're always gonna have problems. Just try to upgrade them.
Yeah. My pilot couldn't make it for my G6, so I had to wait an extra hour for the new pilot to show up.
What a waste of time.
What a waste. I'm going to be late for my dinner, that I'm flying to.
Yeah, basically.
It could be a good problem.
It's a good problem to have, but I would imagine in that world, and we see it because, we have friends in that world, it's still a problem to manage. And the ratio's the same, right? Because you get used to whatever level you strive for, and then that becomes your baseline. And then, your sights are set at the next level, and, that becomes your baseline. But at baseline, it's still as equally an annoying problem within the ratio of your lifestyle than the previous one was. So like you said, how do you handle those problems will dictate the quality of your life, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because there's the spiritual, when you're out of poverty and you're making enough money to make your rent or make house payments, whatever that is, it's like the more money, you're still going to have relationship problems. You're going to have business problems. I think
many times more. Like now you have, we have a dear friend that's quite wealthy, and he's dealing with the family that's expecting handouts or help with this financially, and it's another set of problems. Which actually, I'm almost finished this book my brother Yuri recommended, which I'm going to post it in the chat. I think it's a really good book, well expressed. Called The Art of Spending Money. And it's like, it hits a lot of different issues. It's actually really, really cool, psychologically as well as, financially. So I highly recommend that. But, there's that relationship with money that other things come with, and, as everybody knows, I think anything over 80,000, the happy index falls dramatically. Maybe it's a bit higher in LA or, New York or places like that. But after a certain amount of money, once your rent is paid, once your health, your food, your basic needs are handled, it doesn't necessarily, if you have 3 times that money, you're not going to be 3 times happier. You might be 5% happier, 10% happier, because you fly business instead of a coach or whatever. So, but yeah, I think once your baseline is met, everything else is just a bonus, and not to strive for that much more money at the expense of your health, your family, your loved ones, or relationships or whatnot. So it's a hard balance.
It is. And I think that's all the more reason to have good community. Yeah. Good. You mentioned the chat, which I was like, we're part of this men's group chat, or two different men's groups, but that's been a game changer in my life too. Again, you introduced me to one of them, which was actually both of them. Yeah. So, again, just like kind of paving the way and, pioneering, but I've, not to just keep, gloating on you, but I also feel like there's not only me, but there's a lot of different men and women that have been impacted by, you always wanting to bring people together and always including people, or, like you're always looking out for people. And so without that community, especially the ones that you've been able to curate over the years, not only help yourself, but so many other people.
Yeah. It's always nice to hear, in the sense of, like, it's not an ego boost or anything like that. It's more of a confirmation that, all that I'm striving for, all the risks, all the, the hassle and the hardships that you go through in discovering some of these things, there's a bit of a payoff, as far as like, all right, well, maybe I'm doing something relevant, in the world, don't have kids, leaving that legacy behind in different ways. And so, sometimes, because it does come at a cost too, like, and when you create all the communities, and then, you have an ex-girlfriend or somebody maybe you have a falling out with, and they still keep showing up in your communities, it pulls a little bit out of the experience. And so, like, it does come at a cost, which obviously is a price I'm willing to pay, or I wouldn't keep doing it. So it's always nice to feel like at least there was some form of value that I was able to bring, I guess, in some small way. And then exponentially, amplified by the work you're doing and all the people that you help. Obviously, is not like there was a pyramid downline that you've got a small percentage of that as far as karmic, payoff. But it's nice to see people like you that have embraced it fully and have started to give back yourself and have amplified that impact. And so it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. I mean, and that just goes into, also, I see that in the work that, well, obviously having people come in, do ceremonies, and you see those people that take the nuggets and run with it. Yeah. And then there's those that, look, you fall back into old patterns, the medicine told you not to drink anymore, and you're at the bar every night or every other night. It's like, well,
I mean, look at, how many people attend Tony Robbins seminars or, Joe Dispenza seminars, millions, I guess, on Tony Robbins scale, and what's the percentage of people making huge impacts?
Right.
Like, how many calls you have to make before you make a sale? Like that's fine. Like that'll just a numbers game. It's the more you do, the even if it's 10% of every person you interact with, does something with it or impacts their communities, it's still worth it, right? And especially for those that are coming from smaller towns or, places that are not as at the forefront of things like, all the hippie stuff or whatever you want to call it, like California is, you in Minnesota or,
right.
Stillwater, or me in Canada, Montreal, or wherever over the years, take them in different places, and they wouldn't otherwise normally necessarily have access, or maybe not at the timeline that perhaps someone like you brought it back to your people. They may not have had access to that just because the proximity of them in environments that this is prevalent it's not there.
Right.
And eventually it's like anything else, like a viral video or something, it starts somewhere and then kind of explodes. So I think at some point it'll be it's to a certain degree, it's kind of a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you feel cool knowing that you were doing ayahuasca before it became popular, before Oprah was talking about it and Aaron Rodgers?
No, because I'm sure there was somebody who did it 15 years before me that thought, oh, that's
Terrence
cute.
McKenna's
yeah,
of the world.
That's cute. He just discovered that. He thinks he's onto something cool in you. So there's like Burning Man, same, right? Like,
right.
So there's always someone that was there before you. Yeah. And, you start the comparative narrative. It's, it doesn't really take anyone anywhere. But, I'm personally, I'm glad I kind of discovered it earlier because there wasn't as much external influence to potentially shape your journey. Like I used to send specific videos and ask people like, do what you want, but I would not recommend doing too much research, just enough to know that you're safe and,
right.
to be aware of what to expect and things like that. But sometimes when you over study something before you do it, you start to be like, whoa, well, this guy or this girl, they had this experience. How come I'm not feeling that? Or, and then you start to like affect the journey that you're on or that you would be on if you didn't have all this extra someone else's journey in your head.
Right.
So I think it was nice in the way that I didn't know much. I knew enough about it to dive in, but I didn't hear of anyone else's experiences in my circles really sharing things. So it was more just like, something I'd see a clip on the internet, versus someone else that I knew very well and told me their experience that might have had a bigger influence on me. Which maybe it would have shaped it. Maybe I would have gone deeper on the first three, maybe not. I don't know. But I kind of like where I sit in that timeline. Yeah,
I think so. I agree because if I see it a lot of people that, and I've had it myself, the expectation. Yeah, but I didn't get the big kaleidoscope and I didn't see the fireworks and, not every ceremony is that.
Yeah.
Not every medicine journey is going to be the 6D, the high def, clear channel path It's,
And when it is, there's a flip side to all things. So we had someone in our more recent ceremony a few months ago, 2 nights, and on her first night, she had the most amazing, blissful, deep experience, held by the mother, shown beauty, and all her psychedelic experiences. She had kind of been newly in that path in the last year or so, mushrooms, acid, all these things. And she was like, I just can't imagine like bad trips. I hear people with their bad trips, and it's like, ceremony was amazing. And then night 2, she just went through hell. It was the most excruciating hell she went through. And, when you don't know anything else other than the bliss, the hell sometimes feels worse. But the flip side is, at least I think that's good in the sense that at least you know what it could be. So for somebody to experience like a very challenging one on the first one, that they might be a little scared to kind of go back because like, oh, I don't want that experience again. Yeah. But that'll filter out the true warriors and the people that are really kind of adopting this as a tool, as an ongoing. I always tell people, I recommend it to commit to at least 3 or 4. Because if you do the first one and you didn't quite get there, or it was a bad experience, just commit to 3. It's just like a date, right? You might have a weird first date and whatever, and maybe that's the person. Maybe you just got off to a weird start, but maybe that's your person. And maybe a bad analogy, because if you have a bad date,
I love the analogies of always going into relationships and sex. By the way,
it's very what most people know.
Yeah,
but it might take a time or 2. So the flip side is, if you have a dark one first, you may not make it to the second. The other one is, if you have an amazing one at first, the dark one feels maybe harsher, but at least you know what it could be, so the more chance you'll go back to it. So, but yeah, each person is different. I think it's how committed are you to the change you're seeking.
Yeah. And I had a question too, as we don't have to talk all ayahuasca, but it's so cool because you've definitely paved the way that's how we met. But I remember you telling, because I was like, how did you figure this process out? This 4 to 6 hours. And I remember you saying something about, well, you had an idea of what you wanted to do with music, but then the following day after leading a group, you would go in yourself and ask refinements from other ayahuasca.
Correct. I would start with, and I've sat in many different circles, so I took certain things that I liked from that circle. I'm like, oh, I like how they did this, or oh, I like this, and I kind of pieced together my version of it. But I would, so in the early days, I would get, each ceremony would be a fresh batch from Peru. I would not work with medicine I haven't sat with myself. So I'd sit first, and I would usually do it a week before, because if it's bad, I don't want people to have dieted and all that, and the day before I cancel. So I would do a week before, or 2 weeks, or whenever the medicine would come, test it. If it's good, do the ceremony. And then after the ceremony, do one more to check in, and for, like you said, for the refinements. And the process was obviously a lot of the circles I sat with and the shamans I studied with, but there was probably 50 to 100 that I just did on my own, just kind of figuring it out, understanding it, trying different things. What if somebody lies and they drank the night before? What if somebody lied and they did this? I would test it and see what would happen, so I would know how to deal with it, or see what comes from that. So there was a long process of solo journeys by myself, just going deep, going big, going all these different modalities and different things I would implement to kind of figure out what would be what I perceive to be a good modern version that's that people are able to kind of dive into. Because if you want to do the deep jungle thing, I highly recommend that. But it's not for everybody. A, money wise. B, if you're a single woman, you go into, there's a lot of nefarious shamans out there that you may not want to put yourself at risk for, especially if you don't really know what to expect and you're in this weird and you're like kind of completely out of context. Whereas at least if you sit here before, you're comfortable with the medicine enough that if you are in a place that feels off, you kind of know how to differentiate, how it quote unquote should be and how it is. So for me, it was more, the mission or the calling was bringing medicine to people who couldn't get to it.
Nice.
But if you can get to it, go for it. It's all good.
Yeah.
And I recommend, being in the jungle and all that stuff. I think it's good.
I think it's part of just the adventure to get there.
Yeah.
And be there. It's a completely different world. And speaking of, that was the other part of our early bonding, was testing new medicines.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, by the way, I just got a new batch in from Peru.
Yeah. Let's test it.
We're testing it. I remember the one that was not very good.
That gasoline one, or
it was like melted plastic ceremony.
Horrible.
But then, this is how cool Stefan is, by the way. He had a magical batch, a Hawaiian. Was it Hawaiian or was it Peruvian?
That was Peruvian.
Just a little bit left, and you're like, here, just take this one. And I had the most, to this day, the best ceremony I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Literally inside of a vine, and it was me calling to my tribe. It was wild.
Yeah, that was in my guest bedroom in the middle of Hollywood
Exactly.
on a Tuesday night. Yeah, when people say like it's a lot of it is set and setting, which I agree, of course, especially for your first one, it's nice to be in an environment that's, conducive to that spiritual resonance. But once you're on the other side, it doesn't really matter where you are. And so my two most powerful experiences was the fourth ceremony when I first did it, and not that one that you went because I gave you that last half, but I had done it with Umberto the day before, another friend of ours, a time before where I went super deep with that same medicine. So it was in Hollywood in my guest bedroom and in the jungle under the full moon with 7 shamans in Peru. So one does not negate the other. They're both, the set and setting is you're better off to be somewhere in the city in the right state of mind, ready to jump in, or ready for the medicine, than to be in Peru with all the shamans when you're not quite ready. Like set and setting is predominantly you. Are you ready for this? Do you want it? Are you in? And then of course a nice environment that's conducive to a great ceremony helps, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's just an example of one of the more powerful experiences being in a setting that most people are like, oh, you did it in Hollywood? What the hell? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Again, first timers, yes, do your best to be in a great environment. But once you have the experience, then the set and setting is more within yourself.
Right. And so of all the ceremonies, what has been the biggest test?
Good question. Entering it with a fresh mind, entering it as a student, as a entering it with a beginner's mind, right? Because it's like with all the journeys you've done, like you can't help but have some form of expectation, some form of familiarity around it when you're in that space. And so like to approach it with like, all right, let's reset, start from scratch. What do I not know that I don't know? So I would say, that's probably the bigger challenge. Yeah, jumping in.
And then how about as far as information that she said, apply this to your life?
Yeah, I would say, I remember you were there actually when we were cooking the medicine in Hawaii, and she told me to have a child with my ex-wife.
With Katie.
And and I was open to the concept. I remember thinking, I'm open to it. I'm not quite sure if I want kids, blah, blah, blah. And I got that message and I was like, shit, can I do this? And that might have been the catalyst, a bit like the, Matrix when Neo goes to see the Oracle and she tells him he's not the one. And he wants to tell Morpheus, and Morpheus is like, she told you what you needed to hear. Like, I don't want to hear what she told you. And that's what he needed to hear in order to become the one, because it took some pressure off, like whatever his journey was. And so for me, perhaps that's what I needed to hear. It's like, if I really was open to it and I got that confirmation, oh yes, this is what I should do. Great, let's have a kid. But it was one of the first times I actually didn't do what I was told, because in the early days she would make me do weird shit. I jumped off the Manhattan Beach Pier. She made me fly back home to Canada in November to spend a night on this island I used to go to in the middle of the winter, freezing my ass. I booked that flight. I canceled my trip home for Christmas that year because it was still my broke days. I didn't have enough money for 2 trips, but I committed to it. I got there and it's like, what the hell is this about? So I would just do anything and everything she asked me to, which later on led to the calling of serving the medicine. Who am I to serve the medicine? I later found out that those were all tests to see my commitment to it, which we can get into later. But so this was the first one where I'm like, I just don't think I can do it. But perhaps I needed to hear from her, have a kid, for me to realize, oh, I guess I'm leaning more on, I actually don't want kids. Yeah. And so that in itself proved to be right again. Not necessarily by the clarity in the message, but in the trickery of the message. A lot of times people say ayahuasca could be a little trickster. Right. Tells you what you potentially need to hear, not always what you want to hear. So that would be the. And
if you decide to have kids later on in life, you'd be a great dad. But I agree. It's like, I remember you saying that you always have free will too. It's not like you have to. It's like, but you still jumped off the bridge. You still.
I did all these other random weird things, Yeah. And I think at the beginning, I attribute the relationship with ayahuasca, with the mother, kind of like a child with parents. At the beginning, when you're a kid, you do everything your parents tell you, but everything is amazing and magical, and they take care of everything. They do everything for you, and so of course, they control your life for the most part. And as you get in your teenage years, that's when you start to have your own opinion. Well, why am I doing that? Do I need to? Well, what about? And you start to question their authority. You start to, and so with the medicine, there comes a time where it's not as, it can be, but it's not, you generally for me hasn't been as magical and like, oh my God, I'm in this like amazing world that's so foreign to me. You get familiar with that space. It's always different to a certain degree, but within the context of like the feeling and the alternate state of consciousness, you're familiar, even if it's a different altered state, you're just familiar with altering your state.
Right.
Then you start to question some of the insights and critical thinking, and you start to, which is why sometimes it doesn't feel like you go as deep, because now you're on your own. Like, here's the platform, you figure it out for yourself. We were talking about that earlier, the last one we did together not too long ago, where we didn't really have that strong direct message, you should do this, you should not do this, you should cut this out, whatever. It's more like, here are the facts, the facts here, just you're approaching the facts or the questions maybe in a bit more of a deep meditative state, but there's no direct answer. Yep. So figure it out for yourself. It's like, shit, all right, like we do as adults. You might consult your parents for some guidance or for some advice, but ultimately you're the one making the decision, and that's part of the growth process.
Yeah, that was the interesting one. That last one was like, yeah, you could.
Yeah.
It gave me all these coulds. And I was like,
but what do I do?
But it was great. It was actually after ceremony, talking with you and Noel, that I solidified a lot of, what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, surrounding yourself with a support group, good community, people that understand the process, that's as important as the medicine work itself.
Yep.
Sometimes more important.
Such a huge part of it. Community. I did want to touch on one other thing with I just watched Avatar last night.
Oh, nice. The new one.
The new one.
Oh,
and
wow.
So Awa. So Awa is their mother ayahuasca. I don't know if you like.
So it's funny because I just watched the number 2 nights ago because I wanted to refresh my mind where it left off before jumping into the third one. Are you talking about the tree where they lock in with their beads or whatever?
Yeah, with their hair. And you communicate with Awa.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's the mother, yeah.
That's the mother.
Yeah.
And so, I always got to thinking about like what a great job that Avatar has done, to bring people, that awareness of Awa, ayahuasca, Mother Nature, know.
Or even like The Matrix.
Yeah.
I always admire Cameron and the Wachowski brothers, I guess, in that regard. How do you take a concept? Because like, all the Avatars, especially the first one, because that was mind-blowing at the time, all these kind of movies are just so beautifully expressed. And like I've had so many ceremonies where you almost don't want to talk about it because you won't do it justice. Like I cannot put into words the experience I've had, and movies like that, to me, it's like, my God, yes, thank somebody for doing that. Or Inception. This. Inception to me, it's like an ayahuasca ceremony. Yeah. And a lot of these movies speak to me so deeply after having done ceremony, because I remember Interstellar, there's that bookshelf case. I remember when at the beginning of the bookshelf, like I remember before the meaning of the bookshelf is kind of revealed, I had kind of a similar vision like that in ceremony where I'm on both sides of a space-time continuum talking back to yourself. And so like I remember like that kind of felt familiar. I couldn't explain it, but I'm like, there's something that I understand about this that I can't quite explain. And then the end, I'm like, oh yes, this was like kind of like that vision in ayahuasca. So for creatives like that to be able to contextualize some of these amazing, psychological or spiritual insights, I love it. Yeah. And so it's good. Did you like
I loved it. Yeah. It was great. I mean, I definitely wished I would have watched number 2 as a little refresher before, because I jumped in and I'm like, oh wait, I was trying to grasp like what. Why is the military guys Avatar? Like, anyway, so
I'm glad I did.
Glad you watched it.
I should have been around to tell you to do that.
See,
I'm kidding. See
why?
What happens when I take a day off?
Yeah,
I'm kidding. Okay, well, good to know.
Yeah, you should have your own AI. Like have an AI Stefan.
Yeah, just put all your Steph. What should I do?
Yeah, put all your Stefanisms.
Yeah.
We'll keep it PG here for the crowd, but
there should be two versions of it, like Grok, like the PG or the real stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So yeah, that was, I definitely agree. I'm like, I always curious of like, what are these directors, producers, these writers? They've obviously dove into these worlds multiple times.
I would imagine. Yeah. I couldn't imagine a movie like Avatar or Matrix or Interstellar or, Inception without having, and maybe they're just naturally gifted. There are people that don't need medicine to kind of get to these spaces.
Yeah.
Not one of them, I guess, but, but I would imagine that they must have had some form of experience.
Yeah.
Or they're, just tuned into that.
Yeah, exactly. There was a question that came up. We were at New Year's together in Mexico. Remember Nikki? Did she ask you this? If there was an audience sitting there watching you, like a movie.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're the star in the movie, you're watching yourself on screen, what would the audience be screaming at you to do?
Yeah.
And I'm putting you right here on the spot.
I know, which she shouldn't be on the spot because she asked me that on New Year's, but I don't recall if I answered her or not. I think currently there'd be a big part around being more grateful for what I have, I think.
Ooh, big one.
Which I feel grateful. I do, like daily. Like I have moments where I'm riding my motorcycle through the canyon. I'm like, oh my God, freedom. I've been fortunate enough to not have had any, mishaps on the motorcycle in 26 years, statistically nearly impossible. So I do have moments of that. For the communities, for my relationships, for, my work, for all that stuff. But I think maybe there's like that maverick in me, or that, just what's the next thing where, how, like, I'm not discovering and absorbing new information as much because there's a little less to absorb. Well, there's also so much more you can absorb, I guess, but I'm not feeling the progress as much. So there's a part of me that feels frustrated, that feels a little falling behind, or a little whatever, that kind of eats away at me a little bit, to not be able to kind of, just like a company sustaining growth, right? You can to 3x every year for a certain amount of time. At some point, I would imagine you plateau, or if you scale too fast, it comes at a cost. So, but perhaps I do need to pull back and be grateful for, like, your kind words of the influence I have had, and not be so hung up on myself for not amplifying that impact continually at the rate that I have in the last 10 years. So perhaps something maybe would be that. Yeah. But I'm trying to think of something a bit more, less obvious.
As you're thinking about that, I love being grateful.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to go into the, the booking didn't work out, or this or that. Like, you can get caught up in all the naysayers and the stuff that didn't work. But that moment of like, wow, I just closed a great deal.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Or I've got great friends, or I'm healthy. Or, I survived the bike ride from the office home. What was your answer? Did we share it that night, or?
No, I didn't. And, top of my head, I didn't put too much thought of it. But what comes to me right away is, go bigger, push yourself more. Like, you've set a really good foundation, and it's okay to go reach more. Take that chance. Yeah. Take a bigger chance.
I realized why we didn't answer it. It wasn't Nikki. It was the girl at the La Huerta party before the after party. And she's like, something to ponder until we see each other at
that's right,
at the after party.
She was the one that ran the horses at La Huerta, Mexico.
Rebecca or something, yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's why we didn't hear each other's answers. Because I remember we were trying to think on the spot. She's like, take your time with it. Just when you see me later tonight, let me know. And I don't think we went into her.
Which is such a great question for a brand new person coming in. She's like, I have something
That's a
for
good way
guys.
to put it. Yeah, I liked it. That's
so
cool.
When I'm sitting back, I'm like, what would I want to be telling myself? Go.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So we'll pose a question to the audience.
That's great.
Something to ask yourself. And leave in the comments if you come up with something. Yep. But yeah, I think it's a good question. It prompts inner thought.
Yeah, especially for the new year. Like, what would you be cheering yourself for? What would you be like, let's go? Because there's so many, this happened the last 5 years. December and January tend to be a very busy time for people wanting to go into ceremony. New Year's resolutions. I got to clear out, should I break up with my boyfriend, girlfriend? Do I take this new chance, into realms of possibilities of a new job? And they're hoping and wishing for that answer from the medicine. And I would say 100% of the time, the overwhelming theme is love. Yeah. Just love yourself. Yeah. Love those around you. And it's amazing that happens. They're like, I shouldn't have to worry about, this thing that happened with my boss. And okay, we got, our team is being moved to a different project. Great. Yeah. Just love your family, love yourself. Yeah.
And it's, what you hear from those people that work with the dying and in the hospitals, it's always it's part of and they mention it again in this book. That it's always, you know, how much more time you would have spent with family. It's never like, oh, I wish I bought that extra Ferrari, or I wish, but you need enough to obviously sustain a healthy life. But yeah, it's rarely extra monetary gains or extra accomplishments. It's more, you know, the impact, the love, the interactions you had with community.
Right.
It's funny, speaking of New Year's resolutions, I read this little thing on Instagram or whatever. It said January is where you hear all the dreams. December is where you see all the realities, you know, like so everyone's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lose 15 pounds. I'm going to make this. I'm going to build this. And then December, well, that's the reality of it. Like, did you do it? And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting because, you know, it's nice to have some form of chronological launching point for, you know, goals. But you know, realistically, you know, what are you doing to make it happen? Yeah.
Right.
Same with ceremony.
Yeah. By the way, I had this lady who came in end of December, 85 years old.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, because you and I have shared a lot of our, you know, I want to start this new thing, and, you know, I'm starting a new job, or starting, you know, I want to, you know, new branding for products, whatever it is, you know, our new ideas. And, you know, we're relatively youngish. But, you know, we have time to start new things. So this 85-year-old woman came in, and her whole thing was, I'm thinking of starting a new career. I've got some nerves coming up.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, 85. Like, what
impressive.
do you got? 10 more good summers left, maybe longer.
Well, maybe 10 summers, 5 good ones, I guess. I don't know. Depends
I mean, she seems pretty healthy, but it was so inspiring to me. I'm like, wow, first of all, 85 to be diving into this work, but then it's still, no matter what your age, there's still that same like little butterfly, or, you know, how am I going to be perceived? What will my friends and family think?
I mean, I think it's inspiring. I think that's what keeps people not only alive, but sharp. To have, again, that beginner's mind at 85, to be excited about starting something new. You have a purpose to get up, or you have, a lot of people start their health. They start to deteriorate when they don't really have a purpose to get up for. It's like, I'm retired. They just kind of wither away. So I think that's cool to have someone that has that drive at 85. My brother sent me something where there's this girl, I think she was 101 or 99 years old, beat the record for 100-meter swim. You see her jump, it's slow as, you know, quite slow, but fastest 99-year-old to do it. Yeah. And again, like, it's, you know, the accomplishment, it's much harder at that age, but the bar is so much lower. You know, if you can just do it in, you know, 5 minutes instead of 6 or whatever,
it's fine.
You get the record. But to have a purpose to get up and keep moving, and I think that's admirable.
Yeah.
So I sometimes feel like I don't have that drive at this age. You know, feeling burnt out sometimes. But, you know, it's halfway through. Sometimes you need a little intermission. All right, need to pull back for a bit, reset, and then keep going.
So I guess that would be the next question: is purpose, mission. Is there anything that you're really pushing for, striving for?
You know, I've shared this with you a little bit, but to be a bit more open and vulnerable on here, I've been struggling a little bit with purpose and drive and passion and desire for life and all that stuff. I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from. And I know it comes and goes. You know, I've been through cycles like this before. This one feels a little longer and darker and harsher and a little hard to get out of. And I don't know if it's the overwhelming, you know, to bring a bit of AI into this, which is amazing because, you know, you're able to kind of produce a great podcast like this with nothing but sensors and computers, or however the shit works. You know, not a crew of, in the old days, it had to be a crew of God knows what, you know. It was
me and ChatGPT setting all this up. I named my ChatGPT Chang, by the way. Thank you, Chang.
Really? Mine is Chico.
Chico. Nice.
So there's advantages of it, of course. And I got to say, I'm inspired by you for really having implemented it a lot more than I have, with the songs that you did for New Year's and all these things. I need to maybe embrace it a little bit more, but there's something about it that for me is kind of sucking a bit of the soul out of my life anyway, where I just feel like it's overwhelming. The amount, how fast it's going. It's almost like if you're running with some buddies, and if they just take off so fast ahead of you, it's like you kind of just, why bother? Let me just, you know, stop running and sit down. Not that we're racing against friends and people, but technology, and it's just every expectation. Everyone has the expectation to your clients to implement in your business, and now your cold calls and your automated, all these things, and it's like, I don't know, like how efficient do we have to get? it's like, sure, everything's done for us. We have so much more free time to do what? Doom scroll? Like in the old days, you'd go, like, I don't order food. Like a lot of people, I've never, what do you call it? Uber Eats. I've never done any of that stuff. If I want takeout, I'll either go get it or I'll have the person deliver it old school, which is rare. I usually go just pick it up, or groceries delivering to your house and all that stuff. Like I get time, yeah, maybe more free time if you're busy. I don't want to judge or knock it, but for me, I like the moment of going to the store, like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, and I, know the people. Hey, what's up, Steph? How are you doing? Hey, like there's something about, you run into friends, you run into potential clients, you run into a girl that you might end up dating or whatever. Life happens in the tasks, in the mundane daily tasks. So if we automate that and we pull that out, what's feeding us? You talk about everyone, love being the main basis of everyone's ceremonial insight. You get love every day. You open the door for someone, not the overflowing love, but all those things are pieces of love. Being polite, holding somebody, helping someone with their bags, or just pick whatever. Like micro doses of love throughout the day that brings joy to your life, that makes you feel, purposeful or relevant. And I think there's a bit of that where you're starting to feel overwhelmed by this automated AI computer world that to me is losing the daily interaction with human connectivity, human connection. So I think there's a bit of that. I think there's a bit of, maybe it's a midlife crisis, 47. I don't, my ex-girlfriend was saying that. Like a midlife crisis, maybe for me, it's usually the person who raised kids that didn't, get a chance to travel or buy that sports car. And I have all that stuff. I do all that stuff. So maybe it's an existential midlife crisis that I'm facing, of like, what I did has got me here. It's great, but how do I either keep going or keep growing, or what's next for me? And I'm in the process of figuring that out. Yeah.
I hear that. Excuse me.
Finding a purpose. Maybe my purpose now is find purpose.
Find purpose and purpose. Well, I see that with AI. Obviously, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But is it now taking over your business with real estate?
Not really. I think at our level, the higher end stuff in LA, there'll always be a human component to A, for liability, B, for people just like the service, right? It's like, most people with money don't they don't go to the automated car wash. They have hand car wash or service that comes to them. There's something about, a bit of that human, more catered to service. But I'm sure it will start to automate some of the normal transactions nationwide, potentially for the easy ones that are like kind of a slam dunk. It's a standard sale. You get a loan, you do inspections. It'll tell you which inspectors to get, things like that. Maybe I could see that eventually, potentially. But would you buy a house, one of your biggest financial investments of your life, through a computer? Like, I don't even like to book flights and stuff through, because then you messed up the seat and I have to call the serve, and you get everything's automated. Just give me a person that could just, hey, oh yes, I feel you. All right, let me do this, because you prompt it and it's auto reply. That's my question is somewhere in between those two auto replies. You're not quite getting it. Like, just give me a person I can talk to. So I would imagine, and we'll see where it goes, but I would imagine that there'll always be a human component to it. Yeah. I think, but we'll see.
Well, I agree. I definitely love I think our future will be people coming out of the digital world just to come into the ceremony, which is no digital, no medicine. It's just you and nature, and maybe going on a hike, or then like, oh, this guy's been there before. Yeah. So maybe you have a whole new mission coming up. Maybe bringing people out of the digital world.
I could see that being, a thing, actually, because you have these, they call them technology detox centers, where you're basically just going, like for me in the jungle a few months ago in Peru, no phones for 2 weeks. That was the longest I've not have my phone since I had a smartphone. Yeah. Even the first time in the jungle in 2010, I guess it was right around the start of smartphones, but my business wasn't as flourishing, so I didn't have as much stress about turning the phone off for 2 weeks. It was easier for me to disappear and not really be noticed. Now I got my team, my assistant, clients, so it's stressful to be, and the assistant's amazing, so we're in good hands, but getting some new bigger listings, and it's like, you want to make sure that you're around. And sure enough, right after one of my $20 million sales, I almost texted them saying, hey, I'm going off grid in case there's anything, but we just closed. There shouldn't have been really any questions. And in my head, I'm like, if they text me a day or two before I get out, it's understandable. But as coincidence would have it, the day after I turned my phone off, I saw it after she had asked, and then she was like concerned. Oh, you didn't hear back from me. And, so it worked out fine, but it confirms that stress of like always needing to be reached in case, you don't want them to feel like you've abandoned them. So, but that's a real thing. Detox centers, just being off your phone. I forgot how peaceful it was to not check or just be within the group and sit down and have a conversation. You walk by and you see somebody, you have a conversation, or maybe not, but you're at least make eye contact. Where now, nowadays you don't do any of that stuff. Get to my room, no TV, no electricity. What do? I'll either read or journal or just swing in my little hammock and just think and be present and grounded. And so there will be a need for that. I think there's a reason why the depression rate is so high, and we have more technology, we have more comfort, more conveniences than ever before. Why are we so depressed? We're disconnected from the harmonious flow of life, and so there will be a need for that, I think. And we've jokingly talked, and I think eventually that'll be a bit more serious about getting some kind of off-grid compound, if nothing more as a weekend place or a bug out backup plan or something, but more sustainably. I can foresee that being something that at some point the business is up and running, or give most of it to Jonathan, and just, if I don't need to be making billions, I just want to be able to live peacefully, harmoniously, spend time with people I love, be able to provide certain things that for the family and things like that. So I could see that, and it might be closer or easier or more realistic than we think, because we always think, I need to make at least 10-15 million bucks before I can pull back and set this up. But not really. You get a plot of land somewhere in the right community with the right partner. That could be closer. So maybe that's just start aiming towards something like that.
I like that mission. My brother, I think I told you about this jokingly but not jokingly, he's like, I just want to buy a flip phone. Without social media, without the internet, you're just like, you select 10 people, have your number, and that's how we get
it. If you need to do more, call me and I'll jump on my computer. I think Christopher Nolan, I read somewhere, he doesn't have a phone or only has a flip phone. And Ed Sheeran, I think, gave up his phone. I don't know how current this is, but back in the day, I remember him talking about he has an iPad or whatever, but no phone. So we can communicate mostly by text on iPads, and I'm sure if there's a call that comes in, somebody gives them a phone. But that I can see is very conducive to the creative process, to being present, to performing, to being grounded. Because at some point it's just overstimulated.
It's crazy.
There's 15 different ways to communicate, and sometimes we can't reach each other. I sent you a message on Instagram, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Facebook, it's crazy. Crazy.
And we're all addicts. I mean, anybody with the phone, everybody's an addict.
100%.
Because especially if you've got social media, the moment the lull times, I find myself doing it, I feel like I'm taking care of myself, I'm evolving, and I'm doom scrolling like everybody else.
And that's one of for me, a great environment or an example of that detox is Burning Man. Less so now with Starlinks, which again provides advantages for things like the mud time and the mud burn and things like that. But for me, I still like no Starlink, none of that stuff, because you're completely off grid. You're forced to solve the problem with the people around you. There's something innovative about figuring it out, or having to go to hey, where's Lane? I need help with this. I got to go find you. And if you're not there, I could ask somebody else, or I bike out in the playa and try and find you, or something magical happens, because we're all in the process of, in this flow of helping each other. And somebody's a lot more prone to help you out if they're not busy on their calls or doing their things or whatever, because all right, I'll give you a hand with that if I can. So for me, to me, that's, sorry.
Nice. Nice little
pop. For me, that's a huge reason that for me the burn is so sacred, because of that complete technological detox, which again is dying off a bit. But
speaking of which, the mud year. There's no other greater camp we could have been in, or having each other there. Because it was, it was a rough time, but honestly, one of my favorite burns ever. That
was really cool. And people forget, it's like, it was harsh, but that was only started on Friday. The first 5, 6, 7 days we were there was one of the most beautiful, perfect weather. 2 years ago was actually like that the whole way through. But apparently there was a big dust storm on the Monday, which we left on Sunday. But again, it's all part. I like the different burns, because at some point it gets redundant, it gets repetitive. I like when there's something different it's a problem to solve. And, mind you, this burn, we had the luxury of RVs. So obviously it would have been different in a tent, and I've done it in various different ways in a tent, in the back of a cube van, or all these things. And we got super fortunate. It was super fortunate that I got the pump out that morning, or the morning before. So fresh water and empty tanks. So that definitely helped the stress. But regardless, we would have made it. It would have been fine in different ways.
Yeah.
So that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are we doing there? If we want the luxury, we go to On Linda or go to the Ritz or do something else. Yeah.
But agreed. Thank God. I don't think I'll do it. I've done it, the tent, the yurt, the shift pod.
Yeah.
RV, if you can do it, is where to go.
Now it's like what's nice about an RV is it allows you to sleep well, eat well. We work a lot there. So for me, that helps to be able to be useful and purpose driven in a different way versus survival mode. I think for me, but last year I almost did it in a tent because I was supposed to come back mid burn. It would have been the first burn that I would get there midweek because I was supposed to be in Europe, and then I was going to take my motorcycle and just kind of drive in, set up a tent for 3-4 days. Anything is doable. So that would have been a fun adventure, which I still want to do. I do have it in my mind to do a motorcycle burn, which I think would be cool, just to change it up. On the years where I can't go for the full 10 days or whatever, I think I would do that. So I think it's nice to keep it fresh. But if I'm doing a full burn where I'm working my usual hours and doing all that stuff, an RV is nice, especially if you're with a girl or a partner.
It's so much
comfort.
better. But I do remember,
age.
especially at our age, you don't realize you're 47 now.
Yeah.
47 now. Yeah.
Yeah, you just turned 46. You're one behind me, right?
Yeah. So you wait. I always forget. 46, 47. Sometimes I always think I'm 45, so I'll just keep that age.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting older. My brother and I were building at his cabin in Wisconsin. We're like, let's do it. We're going to put a bathroom addition on, or we're going to do our own roofing and all this fun stuff. Because we did that all the time growing up. But I remember day 2, we're like, wow, this hurts.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so glad we don't do this for a living. It's fun. I mean, he's still a contractor, but he doesn't do the banging anymore. But like, we got to take care of ourselves. That's where the biohacking, another one which you're definitely diving into, is the biohacking world too now.
You actually were the one that introduced me to the peptides. I'd heard about it, and you're the one that was starting with the BP 157 and what do you call it, the wolf stack or whatever.
Wolverine stack.
Stack, which I heard about. I'm like, and then when you did it, I'm like, oh, you know what? So you've definitely guided me on some of the things you've discovered.
See, little role reversal.
It's been very, very synergistic, I guess to say, with you, where there's a good back and forth with some of the things you've inspired me to do, some of the things you've introduced me to, some of the people you've introduced me to. So I think it's a good relationship, good friendship flows both ways, because if it's always one-sided, it tends to drain or whatever. Whereas here, I've always felt we had one of the more healthier back and forths between each other. So I'm very grateful for that.
Feels good. You're like the older brother I always wanted to have, or brother I wanted to have. No offense, Kyle. No kidding. But good brotherly relationship, and I think that also expands into the group that we keep with us. There's a really good, powerful men's group, which I think many of those guys that are listening to this too, it's like that has been such a big part of my own growth, is having other peers, especially guys that you look up to call you out on your shit, and for you a safe place to open up. Because I think a lot of guys, especially where I'm from, we didn't have that. It was like you cracked beers, and maybe by the 10th one you would crack open and I'm having an argument with my wife. Yeah. But just having a good space where there's guys that are doing great things in the world can help you along that.
And also the way to address it, or the way to approach it. For someone to call you out on your things, it needs to be done in a way that is receptive, that you can receive it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you were kind of doing it back in the day with alcohol, the things that go unsaid comes out in a drunken stoop of potentially anger or whatever. So you had those blowouts in different ways with alcohol that, we don't really have. Psychedelics was a huge proponent in that, I think, in building a community of people that are more heart-centered, that are more open, that are patient, that are, so to me, it's, I really think that one begets the other, right? The psychedelics kind of bring together like-minded people, that forms a community that then perpetuates a healthy environment that brings in more like-minded people that are kind of new to it, and then it kind of snowballs in a good way.
Yeah.
From that, I think.
Which is a great playbook, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, if we could get everybody into that, even leaders within our government and political figures, do 10 ceremonies. Start with mushrooms, move into the ayahuasca. And then from there, you've worked on your own stuff. But then it's the people you attract afterwards that really counts. I think it's
helps you implement it. It's like they say, you're better off having a good idea that's with the right team or the right execution than a great idea with the wrong people. So I think, you need both. I think the community helps shape that, and you help shape the community.
Yeah. I had a question for you, especially your early interest in ayahuasca. You lost your mom at a pretty young age, right?
24.
24.
Yeah.
And
24,
was it maybe 5-10 years later you were diving into ayahuasca?
So she died in 2002. I did Aya for the first time in 2010. So 8 years later, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I wonder sometimes where I would be if she was alive. I think her death was obviously unfortunate. I would love to have her around, but she isn't. So what I see from it is a massive blessing in the sense that she was traditional. We grew up Christian or Catholic. I can never know the difference.
One of those.
Yeah, I was altar boy, whatever. And she always respected my rebellion. She always knew I was a bit more I always danced the drum of my own beat. And she respected it because I was never disrespectful with it. I remember this as an example where I wanted to go to a party or something, and she's like, "No, you got to do your homework, blah blah." I'm like, ah. So she goes, "All right, well, just do half of it, and you can go." I'm like, "Great." So I wrote the title of my essay or whatever. I give it to her. She's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "You always said, when you start something, you're half done." And she's like, "Fucking hell!" But she respected it. She's like, "That's actually." The savviness or the smart ass or whatever, like I'm throwing her own words back at her. She respected it. And so we always had this, and I finished the essay, I'm sure, when I got back, but she always kind of respected that my nature around that. So I think, I'm sure she would have been open to where my path would have taken me, but I wonder if my path would have taken me there.
Yeah.
Because I think there was this unconscious or maybe conscious, I can't remember. She did say keep an eye on your brothers and things like that, but the expectation of me to kind of take care of them and they're fine without me. Like it's just as a mother's love, right? You're always worried about your kids. And so when she died, that's when I just took off on my world travels, went around the world backpacked around the world for a couple of years, and the freedom of being my own person because, and perhaps that's why I don't want kids, because it was a lot, right? Like my brothers, especially when they started losing their sights, we'd be in bars, they'd knock over a beer, but nobody sees it. You can't see someone's blindness unless they have a cane, which now Sasha does when we go in public. I'm like, do me the favor and just bring the cane, so it saves me the explanation of why you fucking knocked over his big pitcher of beer and I got to try and diffuse a fight and all this stuff. And every time I'm talking to you here, if they're at a party, I'm making sure they don't knock something over or look at some, whatever. And sometimes I remember this one time, this guy was like yelling at my brother. I look over and see and my brother's just staring. This guy's like yelling at him. He can't see him or hear him.
Oh,
and the guy must have been thinking like, who's this crazy guy just staring at me? So I go up to him like, hey, explain it, blah, blah. And the guy was super sweet once he realized what the hell's going on. And the whole night he's bought us drinks. Hey man, you good? Your brother's good, But it's a lot of energy. It's like having kids. I'm sure people that have kids, like they're running around, you're having a conversation, but your attention is divided amongst like your peripheral of making sure everything's good. So when she passed, I didn't feel the need, and because I knew they were okay, they didn't really need me. And it gives them their independence. They don't want to have their younger brother always, feeling like there's checking up, whatever. So I think when she passed, I allowed myself the permission to break free and create my life that brought all the good things for communities and all the things that we talked about earlier. I wonder if that would have happened if she had been around. So,
did you book the did you know you were going to do that trip, or was it her passing that spawned this whole interest in
her passing? So what happened is when she passed, I had like $30,000 of her life insurance money. So I bought my first condo. It was 150 grand, exactly, 20% down. And then I got this offer. I ran into an old agent or something like that, and they offered me like a modeling gig in Korea for a 3-month contract or whatever. Because I'd done modeling earlier on in life, more just on the side to pay bills or whatever, or save money, buy a car. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I looked into it. So at the time I was working, I took 3 months off. I just bought the condo, so I wanted to be mindful of that. So, but the contract would have paid. I had a minimum guarantee, how it works in Asia, whatever. So I went, had an amazing time, felt liberated to be on my own and in this vast world of I'd done a Southeast Asia trip with my cousin Dave a few years prior, and I loved Asia, and so it kind of fit. So I loved it. So when I came back, I knew that I wanted to do more of that, and so I planned a backpacking trip starting with Korea, because they wanted me back for the following year. I worked well there for some reason, and so I planned my backpacking trip to go to Korea, work for 2-3 months, make enough to cover the rest of my backpacking year. I rented out my condo. So I started to wind down life in Montreal, sparked by this. And I thought, let's just see where it goes. And then I met that Swedish girl in Korea. She came to LA for acting. I'm dual citizen because I was born in the States. So I'm like, I'll go visit her. I did a contract I did a few contracts in Korea off and on for 4 years. I did one in Australia, one in Milan. So every time I would pass from Montreal to Asia, we would either connect through Vancouver or LA. I'd stop in LA for a few weeks, see her. We weren't really exclusive at the time, but then as we spent more time together, we got more serious. And I'm like, I was tired of changing countries every 3 months, for the last 3-4 years. So I'm like, I'll hang her out here. It's not a hard sell. LA's fun. So then I ended up in LA, not necessarily planning on moving here. I'll hang out here. And then eventually I called my brother. I'm like, all right, I sold one of the condos. Sasha was living in the other condo. And at some point I'm like, all right, I'm just unloading everything. So sold everything, stayed in LA. So it wasn't a conscious, like, I'm doing this. It just kind of organically happened, which is, the flow of life, which is perhaps something I need to get back to, where it's easier when you're younger because you have less responsibilities, but it's something that I'm fantasizing a little bit about. I'm selling one of my condos. I was going to buy a house, but maybe before I do that, I'll sell one, move back into my other one, and maybe disappear for a few months. And I don't know. Like I need to get back to the essence of the passion and the juice in my life, which is adventure and seeking and things like that.
Here we go.
So, we'll see.
I see a Stefan future trip.
Yeah.
A single exploration. Maybe doing some. You don't have to go back to Korea, but maybe some backpacking or something, running around, because it does, like, especially when you're by yourself. You're not always having to accommodate to others. Yeah. You can really do what you want. If that spur of the moment you want to go, climb Kilimanjaro again, go do that. Yeah. Whatever that may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also allows you to be, you're by default more open because there's no one that you're with at a restaurant or wherever you are. You're sitting there and you're by yourself and, oh, hey, whatever. If you and I are somewhere at a cafe or at a restaurant, we're talking to each other, it's not likely someone's going to interrupt our conversation unless we look over and we have a moment. But so being alone definitely allows you access or opens you up to a lot more external stimulus or moments or opportunities. Yeah.
And you'll probably run into somebody anyway.
I probably will. I can't seem to get away from it.
The amount of people I actually run into that know you, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know we have especially traveling to, Mexico. I ran into some lady. We're going through immigration, and hey, how you doing? How was Mexico? Blah blah blah. We were both in Korea.
On this last trip?
Yeah, this last trip. And she's like, I was like, oh yeah. She was like, who are you with? And I said, well, it was Bill and Leah's house, and then my friend Stefan. And she's like, oh, Stefan, the agent, like the dark. I'm like, yeah. How do you know him? I'm like, whatever.
Who is she? Do you remember her name?
Rebecca
Sklar, maybe. Yeah, funny.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know it's weird and yeah, I mean it's cool because I feel home everywhere.
Yep.
But at the same time, I also feel sometimes you don't feel this free to dive into things because it's like who there know whatever. It's it's fine. I mean
maybe you could go to North Korea.
Yeah.
and you could be off the grid there.
I don't think I would run into anybody. Who knows?
But, you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. There's some places I'm sure I wouldn't run into anybody.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how the year unfolds.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Well, I think
maybe you rent my place. Well, when this thing is.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with this one because I got to do some permitting here. We might bring What's Your Medicine elsewhere.
Yeah, wherever you bring it, I think it'll flourish. I really love the concept of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it coming back is just fun. I want to bring fun people on to talk about their medicine journeys, but you've been such a big part of my life, like inspiring pretty much everything I'm doing, which is pretty awesome. And, it's that ripple effect, for clients to be able to share their stories if they want. There's a lot of people that are still a little gun shy about, diving into a mushroom or ayahuasca ceremony, but we're still here. We're still making it.
I think what's good about your platform and just you as a person is the kind of similar to my passion or it is finding the balance between the two worlds.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's challenging, but oftentimes you think that if you dive into the spiritual realm or you're starting to seek other modalities like plant medicine, that now all of a sudden you're going to lose all your friends in the default world and you can't do whatever because now you're like some hippie dude off in the woods doing whatever. And it's nice to be an example, for you when you bring people here and guide people in your ceremonies, to be an example of somebody who can navigate both worlds, well. And I think for me, it's always been one of my key components is to be an example of somebody who can, sell a $20 million house and still be very much in touch with, shitting in a porta potty at Burning Man or sleeping on a cot in the jungle with no electricity. Like,
right.
The swing is like, both are okay, and are beneficial in many ways. And sometimes needed to ground after some of these other things, so to find that balance in life. And you've been a good example of that, I think, in with doing your work and something like this, where you're bringing on people that are in both worlds, or sometimes one more in this world, one more in that world, and someone in between, so that it doesn't feel as daunting for people to be like, oh, if I start doing that now, I'm going to have to, get divorced and be all hippie, do orgy or whatever. Like some people have these kind of, these perspectives or perceptions of this world.
Yeah.
That it's all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be.
Right. Well, brother, this has been great.
Yeah, I appreciate.
Before we leave, what is your medicine?
I was thinking about that because I figured you would ask, and it changes over the years. Ayahuasca was my medicine for a long time, Burning Man for some time, and I was trying to think, like, what do they all have in common? So I think my medicine is moments, or my medicine is experiences.
Yeah.
Adventures. I'm realizing perhaps maybe to a detriment, I'm addicted to experiences in the sense that it's hard for me to just kind of lay back and chill, because I always want to be doing something, or on the beach in Crayas, or just like sit on the beach and do nothing. Like, God, give me a spike ball, give me a volleyball, give me a jump in the, like, I just want to go and do something. I want to experience something, which perhaps needs to be curbed a bit. But I would say currently, the best way to summarize my medicine currently, I think it would be experiences.
Yeah, experiences.
Yeah.
I do equate Stefan to experiences and adventure.
Yeah.
I think anybody that's following your page, on Instagram, especially, like, oh, he's at Burning Man, oh, he's in Mexico, and, probably the most social guy I know.
Yeah.
Being able to go out and, maybe sometimes to the detriment of...
Well, it's funny because that's, and not to keep this going because I know we'll wrap it up, but that was a reflection you and Bill, a friend of ours, gave at Burning Man this year, is that maybe I'm a little too... at least not necessarily to always share all these different things I'm doing, because it might be at a detriment to, how serious I am at work, even though I very much am. When I'm there, I'm 100%. But it again, perception is everything, and perhaps it could be like, oh, this guy's too busy doing this, or maybe he's too much like this, and so I've since then have not really been posting much, which has been also nice to just pull back from all that stuff. So much so that people are like, "You okay? You haven't really been posting much. Is everything okay?" I'm like, that makes me realize, well, I was posting maybe more than I realized, because there's an expectation of it, I guess. But so I definitely, again, finding the balance. And like I said, is it a slight addiction to experiences that I'm always chasing? And I feel like I've been getting better at pulling back. I'm not going to the friendship thing. I'm not going to, the forum. There's a lot of things I'm starting to say no to just kind of pull back and give myself some more time. I think like anything else, you need to find the balance. So too much medicine, regardless of what it is, can be detrimental.
And touch on the social media aspect of it too. Is like having that balance of how much do I need to share with the world to, I've done the same. I will go a month of like, posting a bunch of this stuff, the What's Your Medicine videos, and then my life. And then I'm silent for a while. So I apologize to everybody who watches, like, he's streaky.
Yeah. He's,
but there's times.
Nothing. But at least I'll post my listings. I'll post my open houses. I'll post that still. just like, you know, your content with what the work you're doing, I think it's good to be constantly with that, because at least it's on brand. It's a certain narrative. I think it's maybe the swing of like, I really didn't post much from Correas and Montreal and all that stuff, just enough to like, oh, Happy New Year's, and that's it. But yeah, I think it also pulls us, it allows us to be more centered in the experience, more grounded with the people around us, and that's all that really matters. Like, the rest is just kind of, you know, fluff. So balance.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the more that we can stick in community, in balance, but also just being present.
Yeah.
How many kids I'm sitting next to, and I've seen it a lot with friends of ours, kids who, like, this conversation could never happen without them checking Instagram or TikTok 300 times or posting something. And, you know, I feel like that's going to be another big job for maybe us in the future, or you, is going back to taking people out of the digital world.
Back to the basics.
That's back.
And it's grounding, just like I'm sure when you go home to your brother and you're at that cabin building out whatever you're doing, fishing with your nephew and nieces, and just kind of getting back to the basics.
Yeah.
You know, there's something that's needed and beneficial from that. Like, more than benefit, needed. I think it's needed.
Yeah.
We're of the earth. We need grounding. We need to walk barefoot. We need to eat off a tree. We need to, you know, play sandcastle, get in the water, something. We need to connect with the earth. And it's just getting harder and harder, especially with the distractions. You know, it's, if you had, in the old days, you had nothing to do. It's either watch TV, which there's, 5 channels back then and nothing on. Let's go outside and play. Now you have endless ways to distract yourself, or to pull yourself out of, jumping in the water or getting wet in the rain. When we were kids, we were
all the time.
Come home when the lights come on, kind of thing.
Back to the basics. I like that.
Yeah.
And also, to kind of bring it full circle, is taking those moments in time where you're like, maybe I don't really want to do it, but push yourself into the world a little bit. Like, you pushed yourself to go to that party so many years ago. I pushed myself to go to that party so many years ago, and that's where we met.
Yeah.
And that forever changed my life.
And that's the same, and that's the dangling carrot, right? For every event you say no to, what if I miss out on one of my best friends, and a guy like you? What if I would have met that person at that party that I decided not to go to? But you can't, live life that way, because the right people will come when they come, and I already have so much of these kind of relationships and friendships and community. That do you really need more? If you feel compelled, like back then we were both. This was earlier on in our time in LA, and I was out of a relationship, so I was trying to just kind of reset my community. Like I said, a lot of times the exes stay within my community, so I was just trying to let me try something new. This person I don't really know, let me just go out and do something completely different. So it was more warranted back then. But I think as we get older and we form a stronger core, it's maybe less necessary, or it can be at the detriment of that community that's already serving you very well. So balance again. It comes down to balance. But I'm glad that we both went to that party, and I'm glad we're both here. So
here we are.
I'm honored to be on here and with you. And thanks for
thank you, brother.
having me on.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on. There's plus because you've seen it since the very beginning of how this has been taking off, and we'll see where it goes now in the future. But thank you again for inspiring so many people, for all the work that you've done with ayahuasca. You continue to do it. I know you're going to start doing, more of some ceremonies here and there.
Yeah.
But you've been a big impact on my life and so many other people. So thank you, brother.
Appreciate your kind words and
your trust along the process, man. That's right.
Thank you.
All right.